Matthew and Theodore had formed an unbreakable bond since their initial year at university, despite their starkly contrasting backgrounds. Matthew, the offspring of a prosperous businessman, had enjoyed a life filled with privilege, while Theodore, raised by a diligent single mother, had learned to navigate life with limited resources. Their friendship flourished through shared academic goals, late-night study sessions, and an implicit understanding of each other's challenges. Matthew often found ways to ease Theodore's burdens, whether by purchasing his textbooks, covering his meals at the campus cafeteria, or discreetly slipping him cash when Theodore hesitated over an expense. Matthew's generosity was unwavering, yet Theodore, though deeply appreciative, began to question whether there was a deeper significance behind Matthew's kindness. Theodore had always sensed a warmth in his best friend, particularly in the way Matthew's gaze lingered a moment too long, or how his touches, a comforting arm around his shoulders, a playful nudge, or a gentle squeeze of the wrist, felt intentionally affectionate. Additionally, there was a level of concern that transcended typical friendship. When Theodore fell ill, Matthew was there, feeding him soup, and when stress became overwhelming, it was Matthew who whisked him away on late-night drives to help clear his mind. Initially, Theodore attributed this closeness to the natural bond of best friends, but as time went on, he found it increasingly difficult to dismiss the possibility that Matthew's actions might signify something more profound than mere camaraderie. He began to scrutinize every interaction, every lingering gaze, and every gentle touch. Did he imagine it, or did Matthew's eyes soften whenever he laughed? Was he overanalyzing the way Matthew consistently positioned himself protectively by his side? Despite the unspoken feelings that lingered between them, neither dared to confront the reality of their emotions. They persisted in their usual routine, balancing their academic responsibilities with fleeting moments of tenderness that neither acknowledged. The love between them lingered heavily in the atmosphere, yet it remained concealed beneath layers of uncertainty and fear. Thus, they found themselves engaged in a silent dance of stolen glances and quiet devotion, teetering on the brink of a truth neither was prepared to confront. The sky had darkened to a deep gray, with rumbling thunder serving as a prelude to the impending downpour. The university bus, typically crowded with students discussing assignments and weekend plans, was nearly empty. The rhythmic sound of raindrops against the windows created a soothing melody, mirroring the fluttering sensation in Matthew's chest. He and Theodore occupied the back of the bus, the only two passengers present. The silence between them was comfortable, laden with the weight of shared memories, late-night study sessions, whispered jokes during lectures, and the unspoken bond that had connected them for years. Matthew's heart raced. This was the moment he had rehearsed countless times in his mind. Yet, now that it had arrived, the words felt like elusive wisps of smoke, impossible to capture. He inhaled deeply and, almost instinctively, placed his hand gently over Theodore's. Theodore stiffened momentarily, his fingers twitching slightly under Matthew's touch. His warm brown eyes, always so expressive, widened in surprise as he turned to face his best friend. The moment stretched between them, the tension thick with unspoken words. Matthew swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet Theodore's gaze. His voice trembled as he clenched his jaw, attempting to speak again. "I need to tell you something I have kept inside for a long time." Theodore's brows knitted together, his lips parting slightly as if to respond, but he remained silent, waiting. "I love you, Theo," Matthew finally admitted, the words spilling out in a breathless rush. "Not just as a friend. I have loved you for so long, and I..." Theodore's lips parted as a quiet gasp escaped, his eyes widening momentarily in a state of confusion, caught between shock and an indescribable feeling that Matthew struggled to interpret. The bus swayed gently as it navigated the rain-soaked streets, the outside world becoming a blur through the relentless downpour. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken emotions, too intense to articulate. Then, unexpectedly, Theodore smiled, a soft, trembling smile that conveyed both joy and uncertainty, yet also hinted at apprehension and hesitation. Theodore exhaled, his voice barely a whisper. He faltered, briefly averting his gaze before meeting Matthew's eyes again. "I don't know what to say. I'm happy, but I'm also scared." The storm outside raged on, reflecting the tumult of feelings within them. The warmth of Matthew's hand resting on Theodore's was palpable, yet neither made a move to withdraw. With a shaky breath, Theodore turned his hand over, intertwining his fingers with Matthew's. "I've loved you too," he confessed, his voice raw with vulnerability. For years, I've wanted to say it, but I didn't know if you felt the same. Matthew's breath caught in his throat. Then why do you look so afraid? Theodore hesitated, glancing down at their joined hands. Because this isn't just about us, Matt. You know what people will say, our families, our friends, they have certain expectations. We come from different worlds. What if they don't accept us? Matthew's grip tightened. I don't care what they think, Theo. I've spent so long hiding my feelings, but I don't want to anymore. You make me happy. Isn't that enough? Theodore appeared conflicted, his eyes shimmering with emotions too profound to express. It should be, he murmured, but life isn't always that simple. They remained there for an extended period, the bus transporting them through the rainy evening, their hands still intertwined. They discussed their fears, the burden of expectations, and the dreams they held for a future that now seemed both attainable and daunting. The situation was both possible and impossible simultaneously. Ultimately, they reached a decision that was both bittersweet and hopeful. Theodore spoke softly, suggesting they keep this matter confidential until they could sort things out. Matthew nodded in agreement, though he felt a pang of discomfort at the idea of secrecy. He recognized that the world often lacked kindness towards love like theirs. Nevertheless, he was determined to savor every moment he could share with Theodore, treasuring each stolen glance, whispered conversation, and lingering touch. Outside, a storm raged, but within the confines of that bus, love found a serene refuge between them, patiently awaiting the day it could be expressed openly. The announcement sparked waves of excitement among the final-year students, a 3-day university trip filled with laughter, memories, and perhaps unexpected experiences. For many, it was an opportunity to break free from the monotony of lectures and assignments. However, for Matthew and Theodore, it represented something far more significant. Upon hearing the news, they exchanged a knowing look, recognizing this as their chance to forge unforgettable memories and solidify the feelings that had been developing between them for months. Excitement surged between them, intertwined with unspoken sentiments and lingering touches. The thrill of the impending journey was not solely about the destination, it was about the precious time they would share away from prying eyes. Their friends noticed the extra bounce in their steps as they prepared for the trip. Matthew, ever the planner, ensured he packed all the essentials, while Theodore playfully teased him about his over-preparedness. You're packing as if we're moving there permanently, Theodore laughed, tossing a t-shirt into his bag without much consideration. Matthew rolled his eyes but couldn't help but smile. Someone has to be responsible, considering you'd probably forget your toothbrush. Theodore smirked, replying, that's what boyfriends are for, right? A brief silence enveloped them before Theodore added with a nervous chuckle, or, best friends. Matthew's expression revealed a deeper sentiment as he nodded, his heart racing while he zipped up his bag. He hoped this journey would provide them with the courage to express what they had kept hidden for far too long. The bus ride to their destination, a stunning area adorned with mountains, rivers, and cultural landmarks, was filled with lively conversation, music, and anticipation. Theodore had secured the seat beside Matthew, and they spent the journey exchanging jokes, sharing headphones, and occasionally allowing their hands to brush against one another in innocent yet thrilling ways. Upon their arrival, the breathtaking scenery left them in awe. Towering mountains loomed against the sky, rivers sparkled in the afternoon light, and the streets buzzed with vibrant culture. Everything felt surreal as they explored, naturally gravitating towards each other. They absorbed the sights, wandering through ancient temples and bustling markets. The day was filled with laughter and playful teasing, interspersed with quiet, stolen moments. When Matthew absent-mindedly reached out to remove a stray eyelash from Theodore's cheek, Theodore's breath caught. It was a simple gesture, yet it sent shivers through both of them. They shared meals, often feeding each other in a playful manner that amused their friends. At one point, Theodore dipped a piece of bread in sauce and held it up for Matthew, playfully urging him to say ah. Matthew hesitated, but the look in Theodore's eyes compelled him to lean forward, their fingers brushing as he took a bite. For a fleeting moment, the world around them faded away. It was a simple act, yet in that instant, they both understood that their bond transcended mere friendship. That evening, as the group gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter, Matthew and Theodore sat slightly apart, close enough to feel the warmth of the fire and, more importantly, the warmth of each other. Have you ever thought about what comes next?
Theodore murmured, gazing into the flames.
Matthew glanced at him, contemplating the future after university.
Theodore nodded, affirming the weight of their conversation.
Matthew's heart raced as he contemplated expressing something profound, something genuine. However, all he could manage was a quiet, "Yeah, I do." Their hands lingered just inches apart, fingers twitching with the desire to bridge the gap, yet for the moment, the silence between them sufficed. When they discovered they had been assigned to the same hotel room, neither voiced any complaints. If anything, they felt a sense of gratitude. Others joked about the convenience of their arrangement, given their inseparable nature. The room was inviting, featuring two twin beds positioned closely together, and the air was infused with the scent of fresh linens and an unspoken tension that felt almost electric. As they settled in, Theodore stretched and yawned, remarking on the long day.
Matthew nodded, though his gaze remained fixed on Theodore, the dim lighting enhancing his features to an almost ethereal quality.
He swallowed hard, and after a brief silence, Theodore sat on the edge of his bed.
"Matt," he began, his voice softer than before, "can I share something with you?"
Matthew turned to him, his heart racing. "Of course," he replied.
Theodore exhaled deeply. "I think I've been afraid to say this out loud."
He looked up, their eyes meeting.
"I think I've been in love with you for a long time."
In that moment, the room felt impossibly small, as if the walls had vanished, leaving only the two of them suspended in time. Matthew's breath caught in his throat, and without hesitation, he reached out, taking Theodore's hand in his own, feeling its warmth and steadiness.
"I love you too," he whispered.
Theodore released a soft, relieved laugh.
"Well, that simplifies things, doesn't it?"
Matthew chuckled, squeezing his hand. Indeed, there were no grand gestures or dramatic proclamations, just a quiet understanding, a moment of clarity they had both longed for. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Theodore leaned in, pressing a gentle, tentative kiss against Matthew's lips. It was soft, imbued with all the unspoken words they had yet to share. When they finally separated, they rested their foreheads together, inhaling each other's presence.
Regardless of the circumstances, there exists a warmth.
After their trip, Theodore softly stated that they would find a solution. Matthew, with their fingers still intertwined, nodded in agreement.
"Yes, we will."
That night, they drifted off to sleep side by side, their hands still joined. For the first time, uncertainty had vanished, replaced by love and the commitment to face the future together. Returning to the university after their weekend away felt different this time. The campus remained unchanged, the buildings familiar, yet for Matthew and Theodore, everything had transformed. Love had taken root between them, an undeniable force that rendered every moment invaluable and every farewell difficult. However, the reality they had long evaded loomed ahead. Graduation was approaching. Matthew found himself gazing at Theodore from across the library table, feigning interest in his reading while instead memorizing the contours of his jaw and the way his eyes danced between concentration and distraction. "We don't have much time left here," Matthew whispered, breaking the silence.
Theodore, closing his book, replied, "I know."
Their future was shrouded in uncertainty. Matthew's family had expectations. His father envisioned him taking over the family business, a path that would demand his full commitment and tether him to a city far from Theodore. Meanwhile, Theodore bore his own responsibilities. His mother, a widow, depended on him both financially and emotionally, making relocation unfeasible, at least for the time being.
"Have you considered what comes next?" Matthew inquired cautiously.
Theodore nodded. "Every moment, I return to the same conclusion: I do not want to lose you."
"But how can we make this work?" Matthew pressed, desperation evident in his voice.
Theodore reached across the table, allowing their fingers to lightly touch.
"We will find a way," he assured, though doubt lingered in the air between them. The day of graduation arrived more swiftly than either had anticipated.
The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as students donned their caps and gowns, posing for photographs and laughing, all while standing on the brink of a new chapter. Life for Matthew and Theodore felt more like a conclusion than a commencement on that day. They sat closely together during the ceremony, their shoulders occasionally brushing against one another, providing comfort in the moment. As the speeches concluded and diplomas were distributed, Matthew turned to Theodore, his heart racing, and whispered, "Come with me." They discreetly slipped away from the gathering and discovered a serene spot beneath an ancient oak tree, a place where they had shared countless afternoons filled with study, conversation, and dreams. Matthew retrieved 2 envelopes from his pocket, handing one to Theodore.
"What is this?" Theodore inquired, puzzled.
"A letter," Matthew replied.
"Something for you to read when you miss me." Theodore's throat constricted as he produced his own letter, extending it toward Matthew. "I wrote one too."
They exchanged letters, their fingers brushing against each other for a fleeting moment before separating.
"I meant what I said," Theodore whispered. "No matter what happens, I will never betray what we have."
"Me neither," Matthew replied softly. They refrained from kissing neither here nor now, but the way they gazed at each other, the unspoken promise reflected in their eyes, conveyed everything. As they returned to the crowd, their hands brushed together, never fully clasping. They understood that the path ahead would be challenging, yet for the moment, they cherished this love and the hope of something greater, which was sufficient for now. The night air carried a gentle chill, rustling through the trees that bordered the tranquil university courtyard.
Once vibrant with laughter and hurried footsteps, the campus now felt eerily empty.
It was their final night there, the last occasion they would stand together in the place where their love had flourished. Nathaniel leaned against the old oak tree, his hands buried deep in his pockets, burdened by unexpressed feelings. Alex stood before him, bathed in the soft light of the street lamp, his eyes reflecting a mix of yearning and sadness.
"So this is it," Alex murmured, striving to maintain his composure.
Nathaniel took a slow breath and stepped closer.
"No, this isn't the end, it's merely a pause."
Alex managed a forced smile, but the anguish reflected in his eyes revealed his inner turmoil.
"We are destined for different cities, Nate, leading separate lives." "What if?" Nathaniel interrupted, gently cradling Alex's face in his hands. "Do not speak of what if.
Our love is genuine, Alex.
No distance can alter that."
Alex swallowed hard, his fingers gripping Nathaniel's wrist as if he feared losing him. The world around them began to fade, leaving only the two of them in this delicate moment. Without a moment's hesitation, Nathaniel drew Alex into a kiss, deep, desperate, filled with both love and sorrow. It was a kiss laden with unspoken promises, a silent commitment to fight for what they cherished. When they finally separated, Alex leaned his forehead against Nathaniel's.
"We will stay in touch, right? Every single day?"
Nathaniel whispered, "And one day, we will find our way back to each other." A tear rolled down Alex's cheek, yet he managed to smile. "I promise," Nathaniel said, kissing him once more, solidifying their vow beneath the darkened sky. They held each other tightly, memorizing how their bodies fit together, how their hearts beat in harmony. Tomorrow, they would part ways, but tonight was theirs. Years later, Nathaniel sat by the window of his modest apartment, gazing at his phone, where a message from Alex illuminated the screen. He read it for the 100th time, "Miss you." 2 simple words, yet they bore the weight of countless emotions. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he finally typed back, "Miss you too." Across the city,